Today we're doing a bit of a deep dive on Vaer watches. I've got 3 in my collection that we're going to be talking about today. We've got the R1 Racing Chronograph, the D5 Tropic Dive Watch, and the new C3 Dirty Dozen Field Watch. All 3 are different styles, all 3 use different movements, but all 3 are assembled in the United States. So without any further ado, let's get into it with the first watch, the C3 Dirty Dozen. This is the newest watch in my collection. I believe it's the newest in Vaer's lineup as well. Before we get into the specifics, I did want to touch on the Dirty Dozen watches as a whole because it's a really fascinating story if you're not familiar, and there is a ton of history behind this design. Forgive me in advance, I'm not a watch expert or a history expert, but my general understanding, in World War II, the British military needed watches for their army. They weren't able to produce them all themselves, so they contracted out a dozen different companies with a list of spec requirements to manufacture watches for the British military. Those watches from 12 different companies became known as the Dirty Dozen. They all have a very similar look and feel because they had to adhere to the required specs for the contract. Vaer makes their Swiss-made, more exact replica of the Dirty Dozen called the A12. This is the newer, lower-priced C3. The C3 uses a stainless steel 36mm case. They do also offer the C5, that's a 40mm case version, although I would probably recommend the 36 if you want to get close to the original specs, which I believe were 36 to 38. Inside is an American-made movement called Ameriquartz, so it's assembled in the United States with a United States-made quartz movement, which is a pretty cool combo. It has a 40-month battery, 100 meters of water resistance, and a single domed sapphire crystal. Getting into the design, it's obviously a little bit different with the quartz movement compared to the original Swiss automatic spec, but otherwise it is an excellent homage to those original Dirty Dozen watches. It's a pretty straightforward field watch design. You have big legible numbers and a railway style minute track that goes around the outside with loom hour markers. And on the bottom around 6 o'clock you have a separate second hand. Very minimal on the branding as well. You have a tiny Vaer logo around 12 o'clock, and then towards the bottom around 6 o'clock you can see the American assembly. You have a solid stainless steel caseback and a screw down crown on the side. I love the overall simple look and aesthetic here though, and the history behind it makes it even better. 36mm for the original spec if you want to go with that smaller size. Depending on your wrist, I have pretty small skinny wrists at 6 3/4 inches. I think 36mm still looks great for me, but your mileage may vary depending on your wrist size. Pricing comes in at $299 for this one. I think it's a pretty great deal. You have American assembly with an American made movement and all of that history behind the Dirty Dozen watches. I'm a sucker for that sort of thing. My first automatic watch was from Benros. It was their Vietnam War US military reissue. Such a cool history behind the military reissues. I'm glad to have another one in the collection. Next watch up, we have the D5 Tropic Dive Watch. This is arguably my favorite from Vaer's collection. It's such a striking design. I think it becomes even more noticeable in a sea of pretty boring and bland dive watches out there. It's a stainless steel case. This one comes in at 39mm. They do also make a 42mm version as well if you want something a bit larger. Again, with my skinny wrists, I think the 39mm fits great. It uses a Japanese Miyota 9015 automatic movement. It's got a 42-hour power reserve. You get 200 meters of water resistance and a double domed sapphire crystal on the top. Moving back into the design though, it's just such a striking look. It has a ton of presence on the wrist, especially for something that's not overly giant or chunky. It's definitely noticeable, and I think it just looks so great. This cream and black combo kind of adds a more retro look, but is still just a really clean and simple design. The main feature is this sort of wide railway track that goes through the center. It almost has like a roulette wheel type of look. Around the exterior, you have numbers for the seconds, and then towards the 6 o'clock position, you do have a date complication. Every 4th day, the date complication turns red. I think it adds just a really great pop of color. If I had it my way, I think it would be red every day, but it just makes for something a little bit special every few days for you to appreciate on the wrist. The design for the watch face makes for a really crazy loom pattern as well, one of the coolest that I've seen. It's pretty bright initially, but it does fade pretty quickly. I would have loved to see a little bit more staying power there, but it is very cool nonetheless. The rotating bezel for the dive watch functionality looks great, functions really well. It's a very satisfying click. It almost protrudes out past the watch case. There's quite a bit of gap that goes around, so it's pretty easy to grab and adjust if needed. I think it makes for a really unique profile that, in addition to the watch face. It's just such a crazy and great looking design. On the back of the case, you have more sapphire crystal, so it exposes the watch movement. Really cool to see on a water resistant watch at this level. And then again, you have another screw down branded crown on the side. If this style doesn't really speak to you, I do think Vaer makes some more straightforward dive watch styles that they have on their website with similar specs, but I just really love it. Comes in at $599 for a USA assembled fully automatic watch. I think that's more than fair for the pricing. Really great overall, and it was an instant favorite for me when I got it earlier in the year. We've had a field watch, a dive watch. Next up is the 38mm R1 Racing Chronograph. This definitely lends itself to my ever-increasing 1970s vibe with my wardrobe lately, but it is inspired by, 1960s and 1970s racing chronograph watches, and I think they did a great job with that. Also worth noting, this is probably the most noticed and complimented watch in my collection. Not the most important thing in the world, but it does always feel good, so I figured I'd throw that out there. It's a stainless steel case, 38mm for this one. They do have a 42mm available as well. As far as my understanding goes, both would be pretty period appropriate, so depending on your preference there, if you want something bigger or smaller. The lug-to-lug measures 46mm compared to the 38mm case diameter. I think compared to the numbers on paper, it wears a little bit smaller than you might expect initially, but it fits my wrist great. I think 38mm is a real sweet spot for me. It uses a Seiko VK63 Mecha Quartz movement, so that's kind of a combination. You have quartz for the timekeeping and then a full mechanical stopwatch. It has a single box dome sapphire crystal, and just like the C3, you have 100 meters of water resistance. We covered some of the design with this unique case shape. Getting into the watch face though, it's a little bit busy but pretty straightforward for a chronograph. I love the red and black accents with the cream background. Again, it just kind of adds that retro look. Bringing down everything we've got going on here, you have an hour and minute hand coming from the center, as well as a yellow second hand. That's actually for the stopwatch, not the normal time. Starting with the right hand side though, you have a 24-hour clock there. At the 6 o'clock position, you have the actual timekeeping seconds. And on the left-hand side, that red and black split is a 60-minute timer for the chronograph function. A lot going on, but everything has its purpose. Around the exterior, you have that black railway track. I think it adds some nice contrast to the cream background. Quick side note as well, they do make a reverse panda version of this on the site as well. I'm definitely partial to the cream, but if you want something a little bit different, you should check that out as well. You have the Vaer logo kind of dead center in the front, and then American assembly over the second hand. The back, you have a solid stainless steel case back with this sort of wavy branded design. On the side, you have a screw down crown and then the 2 buttons for the chronograph. Really great retro aesthetics here. I love the chronograph functionality. That's a lot of the reason why I wear digital watches so often. I like being able to have timers. So having that in a more traditional watch is a nice touch, especially for me coming from more of a digital watch background. Still American assembled. It comes in at $450. Definitely a favorite for me with my current style. And like I mentioned earlier, probably my most complimented watch right now. If you noticed, I didn't mention anything about the straps initially when covering each watch. That was for a specific purpose. All the Vaer watches actually come with 2 different straps by default, and all of the straps that they offer and sell are all interchangeable within each other. I think that's a really nice touch. The majority of the straps are also all quick release, so really easy to swap in and out. I went back and forth a bit before kind of settling in on these as my ideal watch straps for each watch. On the C3, I've got this khaki nylon strap. I think it looks great and kind of adds to that military look and feel. On the D5, I decided on the premium steel bracelet. It looks great, super comfortable for a metal bracelet as well. And on the R1, I have the tan lined Horween leather strap, which is probably my favorite out of all of them. Probably the most versatile too. I think all 3 of these would look great with the Horween strap, but I'm definitely partial to the leather and a bit biased. I also think Horween, being based in Chicago, it's a nice addition to the story, having a US leather on USA assembled watches. I've been really impressed with all the straps, even the handful I've tried outside of these 3. The D5 and the R1 both come with a rubber Tropic strap, and the C3 comes with the Ocean strap, very similar, but a slightly different texture design on it. All extremely comfortable. They definitely didn't skip on the quality in the slightest, and quick release for almost all of these as well is a really nice added feature. One other thing I wanted to cover that applies to all 3 watches, they all have a 2-year waterproof waterproof guarantee. That is kind of one of the things that sets Vaer apart from a lot of the others. They have a full 2-year guarantee on the waterproofing to the rated level. 200 meters for the diver here and 100 meters each for the R1 and C3. Most of those ratings aren't actually true down to the rating that they say, so it's really nice that they're standing behind that for all 3 of these and backing it up with the offer of a full replacement if anything were to happen. Just a quick disclosure as well, Vaer is partnering with me and sponsoring this week's video. A huge thanks to them. I just wanted to make sure that you knew. I did, however, have pretty much full autonomy over the video. I picked out the idea and the watches. They didn't really give me any direction for specific requirements or anything like that. They just wondered if I wanted to make a standalone video. I've been a huge fan and happily accepted. I think all of the other times I've talked about these without any obligation should prove how genuine all of this is. I love the watches. I love the focus on the American assembly. They're also 1% for the Planet member, which is just a really great cherry on top of everything else. Really enjoyed deep diving into these. I'd love to hear if you have any thoughts down below, any watches you want me to check out. What Vaer watches have you been eyeing? I've got my hands on like 3 or 4 others outside of these, so let me know if you want to see more videos like this in the future. I love talking watches whenever I can. Thank you all so much for watching though, and I'll talk to you in the next one.